There are moments in life when the soul feels robbed, not merely insulted or inconvenienced, but robbed. Something meant for you slips through your fingers. An opportunity collapses. A relationship fractures. A door that seemed divinely opened is suddenly shut, and behind it stands a person who appears to have taken what was yours. In the quiet chambers of your heart, a whisper begins. They took my blessing. It is a dangerous whisper. Not because it is always false, but because it tempts us to misunderstand the nature of blessing itself. We imagine blessings as parcels delivered to our doorstep, finite, labeled, and easily stolen. We believe that if another carries off what we desired, heaven must now be empty-handed. Yet this vision reduces the Almighty to a mere distributor of scarce goods, as though eternity were bound by supply and demand. But God is not a shopkeeper who runs out of stock, nor is his providence so fragile that one human act can overthrow it. And yet, there are times when injustice is real. Scripture and experience both testify that wickedness walks boldly in the daylight. People lie, they scheme, they manipulate. They seize positions, praise, and possessions that were never rightfully theirs. You may have labored in silence, prayed in faith, and waited with patience, only to watch another step into the harvest of your tears. The heart cries out for justice. But justice in the hands of God is not a thunderbolt flung in haste. It is deliberate, it is exact, it is terrifying precisely because it is patient. When we say, God is about to strike, we must tread carefully. For the strike of God is not always a spectacle of fire from the sky. More often, it is the quiet unraveling of illusions. The one who grasps what is not theirs may appear victorious for a season, but they have taken upon themselves a weight they cannot carry. To steal a blessing is to misunderstand its source. It is to believe that favor can be possessed apart from obedience, that peace can be enjoyed apart from righteousness. But blessings are not trophies. They are conditions of harmony with the divine. Imagine a man who steals a lamp from a cathedral, thinking he has acquired its light. He takes it home, places it upon his table, and waits for illumination. But the lamp's brilliance depended upon a hidden current, a connection to power beyond itself. Detached from that source, it is nothing more than cold metal and glass. So it is with blessings removed from the will of God. They may glitter for a moment, but they cannot glow. You wonder why heaven permitted such theft. You question whether your prayers were heard, whether your devotion mattered. It is here that faith is refined. For the blessing that can be taken was never the ultimate blessing. The deeper gift, the shaping of your soul, the strengthening of your trust, the quiet companionship of God in sorrow, cannot be confiscated by human hands. There is a mystery in divine justice that unsettles us. God allows wrongdoing to ripen before he answers it. We prefer immediate correction. We long for visible vindication. But the Almighty works on a canvas far larger than our momentary comfort. He sees the full architecture of eternity, and what appears delayed to us is often mercy in disguise. Mercy giving space for repentance, mercy exposing hidden motives, mercy ensuring that when justice comes, it is undeniable. And come, it does. Not always as ruin, though ruin may follow. Sometimes it arrives as exposure, the truth surfacing, in a way no strategy can suppress. Sometimes it comes as inner torment, the slow realization that what was gained unjustly carries no joy, and sometimes it manifests as loss so precise that it mirrors the harm inflicted, teaching through consequence what pride refused to learn through humility. But consider this: if God is about to act, he is acting not merely for you, but for the restoration of order. His justice is not fueled by wounded ego. It is driven by holiness, and holiness does not simply punish. It purifies. It separates light from darkness. It restores balance to what has been distorted. You may feel powerless, but you are not abandoned. The God who saw the injustice saw also your tears. He noted the silent prayers, uttered when no one else listened. He recorded the integrity you maintained when retaliation beckoned, and he is not indifferent. The wheels of divine justice turn quietly, but they turn with certainty. The person who took what seemed to be your blessing has not escaped the gaze of heaven. If they repent, they may yet find mercy. For God delights more in redemption than in destruction. But if they persist, imagining that success validates their actions, they will discover that the moral fabric of the universe cannot be torn without consequence. And you, far from being diminished, are being prepared. The loss you mourn may well be the pruning that precedes greater fruit. The delay you resent may be the discipline that enlarges your capacity for future joy. For the God who gives blessings is not limited to one path, one opportunity, one season. He is infinitely creative in his provision. No human hand can ultimately intercept what God intends for you. What is truly yours in his will may be delayed, disguised, or redirected, but it cannot be destroyed. And when justice unfolds, it will not merely correct the wrong. It will reveal that what was taken was never the final word. In the stillness of this truth, vengeance loses its grip. Trust begins to breathe again. And the soul that once whispered, "They took my blessing," begins to understand that blessings rooted in God are untouchable, guarded not by circumstance, but by sovereignty itself. There is a subtle but piercing grief that comes when you believe someone has taken what was meant for you. It is not merely the loss of a thing, but the loss of a promise you had already begun to live inside. You saw it forming. You felt its nearness. You thanked God for it before it fully arrived. And then, in what seemed like a single cruel motion, another stepped in and carried it away. The mind replays the scene endlessly. The heart tightens around the word injustice, and somewhere deep within, a dangerous conclusion begins to grow, that perhaps God's favor is fragile, that perhaps his gifts can be intercepted by human hands. But this conclusion rests upon a misunderstanding of what a blessing truly is. We are inclined to believe that blessings are objects, positions, relationships, recognition, wealth, influence. When these are gained, we say, "We are blessed." When they are lost, we say our blessing has been stolen. Yet if blessing is merely possession, then it can indeed be taken. If it is merely circumstance, then it is vulnerable to manipulation. If it depends upon the fairness of men, then it will be as unstable as men themselves. The deeper truth is that a blessing is not first a possession, but a participation. It is participation in the life and favor of God. It is alignment with his will. It is the quiet assurance that one stands where one ought to stand, even if the ground beneath appears barren. The outward forms of blessing may vary, but the essence of blessing is communion with the one who gives all things meaning. Consider how easily we mistake the wrapping for the gift. A promotion may feel like divine approval. A public acknowledgement may seem like heaven's applause. But if these come apart from integrity, apart from obedience, apart from dependence upon God, they are hollow shells. Conversely, a season of obscurity, of waiting, even of loss, may conceal a richer blessing. The strengthening of character, the purification of motive, the deepening of trust. When someone takes what you thought was yours, they may have taken the wrapping. They may have seized the visible form, but they cannot seize your participation in God's purposes unless you surrender it yourself. And this is where the true battle lies, not in reclaiming what was lost, but in guarding the posture of your soul. Resentment is a subtle thief. It promises justice, but delivers corrosion. It convinces you that anger is strength, that bitterness is clarity. Yet the longer it is entertained, the more it disconnects you from the very source of blessing you seek to defend. For to cling to resentment is to suggest that God requires your hostility to accomplish His justice. It is to imply that His governance of the universe needs the assistance of your outrage, but God's sovereignty is neither threatened nor hurried. The one who has wronged you may appear secure. They may smile in the light of what they have taken. They may even interpret their success as validation, but outward possession is not inward peace. If what they have acquired was gained through deceit, manipulation, or cruelty, it carries within it a seed of unres. A blessing removed from righteousness cannot remain sweet. It begins to sour in the hands that grasped it wrongly. Meanwhile, you are confronted with a choice. Will you define yourself by what you have lost, or by the one who holds you? Will you measure your worth by outcomes, or by obedience? The world insists that victory is visible, immediate, and comparative. But God measures differently. He weighs motives. He refines hearts. He prepares souls not merely for temporary advantage, but for eternal significance. There is also a mystery in divine delay. We often imagine that if God intends to act, He must do so swiftly. We expect lightning where He sends patience. Yet patience is not indifference. It is strategy. By allowing events to unfold, God reveals what is hidden. He exposes character, not only in those who wronged you, but in you as well. He asks whether your faith rests upon His gifts or upon His goodness. If your peace collapses because a door closed, perhaps the door had become your idol. If your confidence shatters because recognition was denied, perhaps recognition had become your anchor. These realizations are painful, but they are merciful. For God desires not merely to bless you, but to free you from dependence upon anything less than Himself. This does not mean injustice is ignored. It means it is handled by hands far steadier than yours. Divine justice is not reactive. It is precise. It does not merely repay harm, it restores order, and often it accomplishes more than simple reversal. It transforms loss into preparation. It turns rejection into redirection. It shapes endurance into authority. You may look back one day and see that what was taken forced you onto a path you would never have chosen. A path you would never have chosen. A path that refined you, deepened you, and ultimately positioned you for something greater than the original blessing could have provided. What seemed like theft may prove to be protection. What felt like defeat may reveal itself as design. The essential question then is not whether someone has taken your blessing, but whether you will remain in the place where blessing flows. That place is not a title, a platform, or a possession. It is trust. It is obedience. It is surrender to the will of a God whose resources cannot be exhausted and whose purposes cannot be thwarted. No human hand can interrupt what God has eternally intended for your good. They may delay it. They may distort the path toward it. They may temporarily enjoy what resembles it. But if you remain aligned with Him, what is truly yours will arrive in its proper time. and it will arrive in a form no one can steal. A blessing rooted in God is not fragile. It is guarded by sovereignty, sustained by faithfulness, and secured not by circumstance, but by the unchanging character of the one who gives it. There is within the human heart an instinctive cry for justice. When wrong is done, when something precious is taken, when deceit triumphs over diligence, the soul does not remain silent. It rises in protest. It demands balance. It longs to see the scales restored. This longing is not sinful in itself. It reflects the image of a just God imprinted upon us. Yet the danger lies in how we expect that justice to unfold. We are creatures of immediacy. We want correction now, vindication now, consequences now. If someone has wronged us, we wish to see the results swiftly and visibly. We imagine that divine justice should resemble a lightning strike. Sudden, unmistakable, dramatic. But the justice of God is rarely theatrical. It is deliberate, it is patient, and it is patient not because it is weak, but because it is sovereign. When we say that God is about to act, we must understand that His about to is not measured by our clocks. He operates beyond our surest timelines. What feels like delay to us is often preparation in His hands. He sees threads we cannot see, motives interwoven with consequences, private decisions rippling into public outcomes. If He were to act instantly upon every wrongdoing, the world would collapse under the weight of its own guilt. Instead, He allows time to expose, to reveal, to ripen. There is a peculiar terror in this ripening. A wrongdoing that appears successful at first begins to carry hidden fractures. The one who has taken what was not theirs may enjoy applause, comfort, or advantage, yet beneath the surface, something begins to erode. Conscience, though often ignored, is not easily silenced. The human soul was not designed to thrive on stolen ground. Even if outward success continues, inward stability weakens, peace becomes elusive, trust becomes fragile, relationships becomes a source of unease. Divine justice often works from the inside outward. We tend to focus on external punishment, imagining loss, humiliation, or downfall, and sometimes such outcomes occur. But more often, God begins by allowing the wrongdoer to confront themselves. He permits them to experience the weight of what they have chosen. A lie must be maintained, a deception must be guarded. An illusion must be sustained, and the effort required to preserve false success becomes exhausting. What looked like triumph slowly reveals itself as bondage. Meanwhile, the one who was wronged wrestles with a different temptation, the temptation to become judge. It is astonishing how easily injury transforms into self-appointed authority. We begin to monitor, to anticipate, to almost hunger for the downfall of the one who hurt us. We scan for signs of collapse. We interpret every inconvenience in their life as confirmation that God is finally moving. But this posture quietly distorts our own souls. To fixate on another's punishment is to allow their wrongdoing to continue shaping us. It keeps us tethered to the very event we wish to escape. It tempts us to equate justice with revenge, and revenge with righteousness. Yet divine justice is not fueled by wounded pride. It is grounded in holiness. It seeks restoration of order, not gratification of anger. There is also the possibility, one we often resist, that God's patience toward the wrongdoer is mercy, not approval, not indifference, but mercy. The same mercy that has spared us countless times. We are quick to desire immediate consequences for others, yet grateful for delay when we ourselves fall short. This does not excuse injustice. It places it within a larger framework. God's desire is not merely to punish sin, but to redeem sinners. And redemption requires time. Still, justice is not forgotten. The moral structure of the universe is not fragile. It is upheld by a God who sees in secret. What is concealed from public view is fully visible to him. What is rationalized in private is recorded without distortion. The confidence of the unjust often rests upon the belief that they have escaped detection. But one cannot escape the gaze of the one who formed the conscience itself. When consequences arrive, they are rarely random, they are precise. Sometimes they mirror the original wrongdoing in such a way that the connection becomes undeniable. A person who manipulated may find themselves mistrusted. One who deceived may be deceived. One who stole opportunity may discover doors closing without explanation. These outcomes are not accidents. They are reflections. And yet, divine justice is not solely about the one who wronged you. It is also about you. As time unfolds, something is happening within your own heart. If you surrender the desire to control the outcome, you begin to experience a different kind of freedom. You are no longer responsible for balancing the scales. You are no longer burdened with orchestrating consequences. You are released into trust, and trust, though difficult, is profoundly stabilizing. It anchors you not in circumstances, but in character, the unchanging character of God. There is a strange strength in refusing to retaliate. It feels at first like weakness, like surrender, but in reality, it is alignment with a power far greater than personal revenge. It is the acknowledgement that justice belongs to God, because only He can administer it without corruption. Only He can act without selfish motive. Only He can see the full tapestry of cause and effect. You may not witness the resolution you imagine. It may not arrive in the form you expect, but if God is just, and He is, then nothing is overlooked. No tear is ignored. No wrong is trivial. The apparent silence of heaven is not absence. It is patience, and patience in the hands of God is never wasted. In time, what was hidden will be revealed. What was crooked will be straightened. What was taken unjustly will either be restored or replaced in ways that surpass the original loss. And you will look back, not with the satisfaction of revenge, but with the quiet awe that justice, though delayed, was never denied. There is a profound difference between losing something and being prepared for something greater, though at first the two experiences feel identical. When a blessing appears to be taken, the immediate sensation is emptiness. A space once filled with expectation now echoes with uncertainty. Plans unravel, confidence wavers, and the mind begins to question whether the future has narrowed rather than expanded. Yet what feels like subtraction may, in the hidden arithmetic of God, be preparation. Preparation is rarely comfortable. It involves stretching, refining, and often stripping away illusions we did not know we carried. We tend to assume we are ready for the very things we desire. We see the position, the relationship, the influence, or the opportunity, and believe ourselves fully equipped to steward it. But God, who sees not only the gift, but the weight of the gift, understands what must be formed within us before it can safely rest upon our shoulders. If someone has taken what you believed was your blessing, one possibility, difficult though it may be to accept, is that what was taken would have crushed you in its current form, not because you are incapable, but because growth precedes responsibility. A tree must deepen its roots before it can bear the strain of heavy fruit. Without depth, abundance becomes destruction. Loss, then, becomes a tool. It exposes the foundations upon which we were building. If our identity was quietly entwined with the blessing we expected, its removal feels like personal diminishment. We do not merely grieve the opportunity, we grieve the version of ourselves we imagined becoming through it. But this exposure is merciful. It reveals whether our sense of worth rests upon divine approval or public validation, upon obedience or outcome. There is also the matter of motive. We are not always as pure in our ambitions as we suppose. We may seek a blessing partly to serve God and partly to secure admiration. We may desire influence not solely to uplift others, but to confirm our own significance. When a door closes, it compels us to examine these motives. It invites us into an uncomfortable honesty, and in that honesty, transformation begins. Transformation is slow. It does not announce itself with spectacle. It works quietly, like yeast in dough, altering texture and substance from within. While you wait, while you wrestle with disappointment, your character is being shaped, patience is deepening. Empathy is expanding. Dependence upon God is becoming less theoretical and more lived. These are not dramatic changes, but they are durable ones. Consider the alternative. Had the blessing remained in your grasp without this season of refinement, would you have held it lightly? Would you have stewarded it humbly? Or would you have assumed it as proof of your own sufficiency? God is not merely interested in giving gifts. He is invested in forming souls capable of carrying them without corruption. There is also a hidden redirection that often accompanies apparent loss. We fixate upon the path we envisioned and interpret any deviation as failure. Yet God's imagination for your life may be broader than your own. What was taken may have been good, but not ultimate. It may have been suitable, but not perfect. In removing it, He is not diminishing your future. He is adjusting its trajectory. This adjusting can feel like wandering. You may question your decisions. You may wonder whether you misheard God or misunderstood His leading. But guidance is not always linear. Sometimes clarity is granted only in retrospect. What seems like a detour reveals itself later as the only route that could have produced the strength, wisdom, and resilience you now possess. There is something else that loss accomplishes. It detaches you from entitlement. Entitlement whispers that because you worked hard, because you prayed faithfully, because you behaved rightly, you are owed a specific outcome. But blessing is not a wage. It is grace, and grace cannot be demanded. When something is taken, it reminds us that everything we receive is ultimately a gift, not a guarantee. This realization does not diminish effort or faithfulness. It purifies them. You continue to work, to pray, to serve, not as transactions to secure reward, but as expressions of trust. Your obedience becomes less conditional. Your devotion becomes less dependent upon visible success. And in that shift, your relationship with God deepens. Meanwhile, the one who took what seemed to be yours may be walking a very different path. They may be enjoying what you lost, but enjoyment is not the same as preparedness. Without the refining you are undergoing, they may find themselves overwhelmed by pressures they did not anticipate. What you are learning in obscurity, endurance, humility, discernment, may be precisely what sustains you when your own season of visible blessing arrives. Not necessarily in the form you once imagined, but in a form suited to who you have become. The delay will have enlarged your capacity. The disappointment will have clarified your priorities. The disappointment will have clarified your faith. When the next opportunity appears, You will approach it differently, not with desperation, but with steadiness. You may even find gratitude for what was taken, not because the pain was pleasant, but because the process was purposeful. You will see that the apparent theft did not derail your destiny. It redirected it. It shielded you from premature elevation. It shaped you into someone who values the giver more than the gift. In this light, preparation is revealed as one of God's most severe mercies. Severe because it often arrives through loss. Merciful because it ensures that when blessing finally rests in your hands, it will not master you. You will hold it with open palms, aware that its true source was never human approval or circumstance, but the faithful wisdom of a God who knew exactly what you needed, and exactly when you needed it. There is a moment in every trial when the question quietly shifts from "Why did this happen?" to "Who am I becoming because this happened?" To "Who am I becoming because this happened?" The first question looks outward, searching for explanation, for someone to blame, for a sequence of events to dissect. The second question looks inward and upward. It assumes that suffering, even unjust suffering, is not meaningless. It suggests that within the apparent chaos, something deliberate is unfolding. When someone takes what you believed was your blessing, the immediate instinct is to focus on the external event, the lost opportunity, the broken trust, the public humiliation. But over time, if you allow it, the focus begins to move. You start to notice what is being shaped within you, sometimes painfully, sometimes quietly, but unmistakably. Adversity has a way of revealing the architecture of the soul. When everything is going well, it is easy to believe that our faith is strong, our character stable, our trust unshakable. Success rarely tests us deeply. It affirms us. It comforts us. But loss interrogates us. It asks what we truly believe about God when His blessings appear withheld. It challenges whether our devotion was anchored in who He is or in what He provided. This interrogation is not cruelty. It is refinement. Refinement, by its very nature, involves heat. Metal is not purified in comfort. It is placed in fire so that impurities rise to the surface and can be removed. In the same way, when you are wronged, when something is taken from you, hidden elements of your heart rise. Anger, pride, fear, a desire for recognition, a craving for control. These were always present, but prosperity concealed them. Loss exposes them. Exposure is uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. What remains hidden cannot be healed. What remains unexamined cannot be transformed. In bringing these inner reactions to light, God is not condemning you. He is inviting you into freedom. He is showing you where your peace was fragile, where your identity was too tightly tied to external affirmation. There is also a quiet strengthening that occurs when you choose integrity in the face of injustice. It would be easier, in many ways, to retaliate, to speak harshly, to undermine in return, to justify small compromises because you were first treated unfairly. But when you resist this pull, when you remain faithful to your convictions despite the cost, something solidifies within you. Integrity forged under pressure is different from integrity maintained in ease. It becomes less theoretical and more embodied. You are no longer righteous because circumstances favor you, but because you have chosen righteousness when it disadvantages you. This choice builds a kind of spiritual muscle. It deepens your reliance on God. It teaches you that obedience is not contingent upon outcomes. At the same time, adversity cultivates empathy. When you have tasted disappointment, you become more sensitive to the disappointments of others. When you have endured injustice, you recognize its sting in another's story. The very pain you wish to avoid becomes a bridge through which you can offer understanding and comfort. In this way, what seemed purely destructive becomes quietly redemptive. There is a paradox here. The very act that threatened to diminish you can enlarge you instead. Enlargement does not always look like promotion. It may not be visible at all, but inwardly, your capacity expands. You learn to wait without collapsing. You learn to trust without immediate evidence. You learn to surrender outcomes without surrendering effort. These are not small lessons. They are the foundations of mature faith. Mature faith does not deny hurt. It does not pretend injustice is acceptable. But it refuses to let injustice dictate identity. It understands that who you are is not determined by what was taken, but by the one who holds you. This realization creates a stability that circumstances cannot easily shake, from the need to prove yourself. When a blessing is taken, especially publicly, there can be an urge to demonstrate your worth, to secure another opportunity quickly, to silence critics through visible success. But as refinement continues, this urgency begins to fade. You become less concerned with immediate validation and more committed to quiet faithfulness. This shift is powerful. It frees you from striving born of insecurity. It anchors your confidence not in applause, but in alignment with God's will. You work diligently, not to reclaim what was lost, but because diligence itself is an act of worship. Over time, you may notice that the wound itself has changed. What once felt raw and consuming becomes a scar, still present, but no longer painful. And scars have a peculiar testimony. They speak of survival. They tell a story of endurance. They remind you that what did not destroy you has in some ways defined you. The person who took what seemed to be your blessing may never understand the transformation their actions set in motion. They may remain unaware of the depth they inadvertently cultivated in you. But you will know, you will recognize that the trial did not reduce you. It revealed you. It stripped away illusions and left something stronger in their place. In the end, the greatest blessing may not be the restoration of what was lost, but the restoration of your soul into greater clarity, humility, and strength. The injustice that once felt like an interruption becomes part of your formation. And formation, though costly, is far more enduring than any single opportunity. While circumstances shift and human actions fluctuate, the shaping of your character endures, and a soul refined through adversity carries a quiet authority, an authority not granted by position or possession, but earned through faithfulness in the fire. A journey where the focus is no longer on what was taken, nor even on how you were changed by it, but on what God intends to restore through it. Restoration is not merely the return of a lost object or opportunity. It is the reordering of what was dislocated, the healing of what was fractured, the strengthening of what was weakened. And divine restoration rarely looks identical to what preceded the loss. It is often deeper, wiser, and more enduring. When something is unjustly removed from your life, the immediate desire is replacement. You want the same door reopened, the same position reinstated, the same relationship repaired exactly as it was. But God does not simply rewind history, He redeems it. And redemption involves transformation, not mere repetition. There is a subtle danger in clinging too tightly to the original form of the blessing. It can prevent you from recognizing the new shape in which it returns. You may be so fixed on the past version that you overlook the present provision. Yet God's restorations are not copies. They are creations. They carry within them the wisdom gained through your waiting, the humility forged through your loss, the discernment sharpened through your disappointment. It is also important to understand that restoration is not always public. Sometimes the most profound restoration happens within. Peace replaces anxiety, confidence replaces insecurity, clarity replaces confusion. These inward restorations may not attract attention, but they are the foundation upon which outward blessings can safely stand. There is a quiet authority that emerges in a person who has endured injustice without surrendering faith. It is not loud. It does not boast, but it is unmistakable. Others sense it. They recognize a steadiness that cannot be easily shaken. This authority is part of restoration. It is the fruit of having trusted God when trust was costly. You may begin to see opportunities appear that you would not have previously considered. Doors open that align more closely with your true calling than the one you lost. Relationships form that are rooted in mutual respect rather than convenience. In these moments, you may realize that what was taken was not the pinnacle of your destiny, but a stepping stone towards something more fitting. Restoration also carries a moral dimension. The one who wronged you may face consequences, but your restoration does not depend upon their downfall. This is a crucial distinction. If your hope rests on their collapse, your joy remains tethered to their fate. But if your hope rests in God's faithfulness, you are free to move forward, regardless of what becomes of them. Freedom is one of the clearest signs of restoration. You are no longer rehearsing the injury. You are no longer calculating fairness. You are no longer waiting for an apology in order to breathe again. Instead, you find yourself living, planning, building, trusting. The past has not vanished, but it no longer governs you. There is also an enlargement of vision that accompanies true restoration. Having experienced loss, you are less naive about the fragility of circumstances. You hold blessings with gratitude rather than entitlement. You steward opportunities with humility rather than assumption. You understand that everything entrusted to you is ultimately from God, and therefore to be managed with reverence. This posture protects you. It guards against the pride that often precedes collapse. It keeps you attentive to the source, rather than intoxicated by the gift. In this way, restoration is not only about receiving again. It is about receiving differently. You may even find that your story becomes a source of encouragement to others. The very injustice that once threatened to silence you becomes a testimony of perseverance. When someone else whispers, "They took my blessing," you can speak not from theory, but from experience. You can assure them that what is rooted in God cannot be permanently stolen. You can point to your own life as evidence that delay is not denial. There is a deeper layer still. Restoration is ultimately about alignment with God's eternal purposes. Rather than temporary outcomes, earthly blessings, however precious, are not the final measure of divine favor. They are signs, shadows, of a greater inheritance. When you have walked through loss and witnessed restoration, your attachment to temporal things loosens slightly. You begin to see that your truest security lies beyond circumstance. This perspective does not diminish gratitude for earthly gifts. It purifies it. You enjoy them without being enslaved by them. You pursue excellence without making it your identity. You love deeply without assuming permanence. And in this balanced posture, you experience a freedom that success alone could never grant. At last, you may look back on the moment when you believed your blessing had been taken and recognize it as a turning point, not because the pain was insignificant, but because the outcome was transformative. What seemed like an ending was a redirection. What felt like abandonment was preparation. What appeared to be loss was the first movement in a larger design, and in that recognition, gratitude quietly replaces resentment. Not gratitude for the wrongdoing itself, but for the faithfulness of God within it. You see that He did not merely restore what was lost. He restored you. He deepened your trust, strengthened your character, expanded your vision, and anchored your hope more firmly in Himself. This is the final movement of the story. Not revenge, not mere repayment, but renewal. A life once shaken now stands steadier. A heart once wounded now beats with wiser courage. And a soul that once feared its blessing had been stolen now understands that what is given by God, refined by trial, and guarded by His sovereignty, can never be ultimately taken away.